I just like to kick off with really repeating something that I said to Richard, or really Richard said it to me earlier on. It's a very exciting time now, the film industry. I've got that feeling. I've got the feeling I've spent the day with people who genuinely love what they're doing and find it really fascinating. And to be honest, 5 years ago, I didn't always feel that with some people in our industry.
Well, I think Orson Welles described it as the biggest toy set or train set a kid could ever have. It's fantastic. It's such, I think at the moment it's a very dynamic time to be involved in the industry. The stereo aspect of it is very, very, very exciting. There's so much that one can do. We're scratching the surface. So it's a question of diving in there and just, it's a whole new world of creativity that is going to open up. And I just kind of thank God that I'm involved, basically. It's lovely.
So if I were asked to ask Andy, the keynote of this conference is we shift from endlessly talking about technology to let's be creative. Are we being as creative as we could be? Do you think we're on that cusp?
I think we are. I think many of the best, well, the vast majority of the defining 3D creative pieces are yet to be made. There's just so many things that you can do in 3D that people even haven't tried yet. You know, so many things you can see that the world hasn't seen yet in 3D. And when you get those fantastic talents, and now we've got serious filmmakers looking at 3D, it's a very exciting time. But yeah, there's so many things out there to be explored and experimented with, so that's very exciting.
Well, let's turn to the word aesthetic, because that was a word that was used by yourself, Vicky. You said now is the time to... Can you say a bit more about what was in your mind? I don't want to put words into your mouth, but what was in your mind?
I think it is this moving from where we're released from having to say, is it possible technically, and how on the earth do we do it, into being able to say, okay, now this is what I want to try creatively. And that's the point I think we're at, and it'll just go on, it'll expand to be as imaginative as anybody can be with it. And I think for a while everybody was looking for rules and regulations and for sort of how you did 3D and what were the facts and the figures and how did you achieve it technically. And I think now people are getting the idea that actually you can do it that way, or you can feel your way through it with the right expertise. And then you can work as intuitively as you would work with any element of film or photography.
What is going to be the right expertise? I'm wondering, listening to the variety of things that have been said today, whether all sorts of people who hitherto might not have been part of this creative world may bring things into it, because the sense that people who might think about the three-dimensional world in ways that are differentiated from the way that perhaps traditionally people have come into the world of film and television. Are we expected to see more people from, say, a sculptural background, for example, or other areas of the fine arts who hitherto might not thought it was for them or there was no space?
I think the fundamental is still storytelling, so filmmaking. But I think there's probably quite a lot of influence which we could all absorb from theatre, because it's definitely, it sort of lends it. There is a stage-like element to 3D with that sense of looking into the window behind the screen. I mean, I think maybe sculpture and the fine arts and all that would be just much influence as there is in 2D filmmaking as 3D, but. And the role, I think the evolving role will be the stereographer. Like, how creative does the stereographer get versus being the person who technically sorts out the 3D issues?
Well, could we come to that role then? Because we were blessed with a keynote speech by one stereographer, and we have another one sitting there, and maybe we have a variety of stereographers here. I was struck with that issue about how do you build an empathetic relationship? How do you actually know the person who approaches you or you approach them? How do you get inside their head? It's not just knowing their track record, people know that, but is this really going to work well?
I think there's a couple of important points there. I mean, the actual role of a stereographer and what does that term mean, and the variety of roles that they get assigned to really is an interesting one. I mean, sometimes the guy who's just operating the rig on the set is the stereographer, and he's had no involvement in the project until the first day of the shoot, which, you may get lucky and you may be successfully creatively 3D and you may not. But, the best way to involve a stereographer is obviously definitely from the start of the project, and it may not even be a guy who's a stereographer. It may be the DP who's got that capability in the future.
Well, Gareth, you had a story to tell, didn't you? Because you said that you had a script, you had a great idea, you had some money, but really finding people who would actually help develop that process. And I think you said very clearly, I realised the importance of the stereographer.
Well, I must admit, the importance of the stereographer is not so much something that I came across. I was told by people who were advising me.
You must have one of these.
You must have one, because, it's one of those, because it's a relatively new role, particularly people in the production, the money side. It's like, well, what's this cinema, what's this stereographer? Isn't that the realm of the cinematographer? And there will be, I know there'll be a pressure to, to try and get cinematographers to deal with the stereography, but it will be a very big mistake, because they are, they're cousins, but they are very, very specifically different skill sets, and they're invaluable. Stereographers are invaluable, not just to manage the technical side, but to actually, more importantly, really, to enable you to be able to realise, conceptually and kind of philosophically what you're intending to do, because the stereography is an art form. It's not.
Richard, I said earlier when we were talking that you seem blessed with actually having a multitude of skills, but in particular producing post-production, and whether that was advantageous to move across or whether actually it was quite full of difficulties.
It was extremely advantageous, but also having, on the production side, having a fairly strong technical understanding of what is required meant that finding the right people for the right places in the various departments was something more of a joy than a trial. And just stereography, going back to that, it's just so important. You cannot have your DP kind of running around trying to think, you want your DP to light, you don't want him to do the stereography. Put the right people in the right places and get them to do the right job properly, and you'll get a much better, smoother, quicker procedure. You get one person trying to do everything. I know there's a school of thought that some people might want to go down that route. I'm not sure that it's a good route. People can disagree with me on that, but get your DP to light and get your stereographer to set it, and it's just, you need to have that interaction between the stereographer, director, DP, production designer. That's all part of the same package, and it's, this is in a drama. It's different within sort of a documentary system. You're looking for different things, but you still need to have that ability, and those separate sort of entities working together, because you suddenly get your DP, and if you're out in the middle of Africa trying to sort out the stereo rigs, you're missing shots.
The thing is,
you're just not going to get it.
The thing is, if the stereo's wrong, it's catastrophic. It's as bad as having your images out of focus. It's that difficult, if not impossible, to fix. So you can't underestimate how important it is to get it right, and to have somebody whose focus on set is to make sure that it's right. And also, conceptually, I mean, there's nothing worse seeing a scene that's been shot where the 3D depth is all over the place. You cut from one shot where it's got a very narrow 3D depth to another shot where it's got huge depth. And that's all of those issues which need to be aware of, and you need to be working with your stereographer to ensure that that it works. Because if it doesn't work, there's very little you can do to fix it.
So the stereographer has got to have a great imaginative understanding of what colleagues want. Yes?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously two roles. There's one, the most important, to make sure you're producing technically sound, usable 3D pictures, then obviously beyond that, one thing a lot of people I speak to don't really get, some naivety, is that they think there's one way to view things in 3D, and somehow 3D is like a realistic picture of the world, and this is how that looks in 3D. Well, it's not the case. You know, you can play with 3D. There's a million different ways I can shoot a particular subject in 3D. I can actually change it within a shot. I can start with something flat and then give it volume, you know, throughout a shot. And there's a lot more to it than just producing technically sound pictures. But you've got to, when you're looking at stereographers, you first got to find someone who can do the technical aspect, then hopefully they've got this creative ability and as well, so that narrows it down even further to try and find both those roles within one person.